The scent of beeswax polish clung to my fingertips, mingling with the more expensive aromas that permeated the Sokolov mansion. Lemon and cedar competed with hints of aged leather and something else. Something distinctly male that seemed to linger in every room, even when he wasn't there. I worked the soft cloth across the mahogany surface of what was probably an antique worth more than my entire life savings, my muscles aching after 8 hours of cleaning a house that never seemed to get dirty. This was my 4th week working at the Sokolov estate, and I still hadn't met the owner. The staff spoke about him in hushed tones, glancing over shoulders as if the mere mention of his name might summon him like some dark fairy tale creature. Mr. Sokolov. No first name, at least none that anyone used, just Mr. Sokolov, the businessman with undisclosed interests who required background checks more thorough than government security clearances for his household staff. "Ella, the library needs attention," Mrs. Petrova announced, appearing silently in the doorway. The head housekeeper always moved like that, materializing without footsteps. Her iron-gray hair was pulled back so severely it seemed to stretch her face, erasing any hint of kindness that might have once resided there. "I just finished the study," I said, straightening my aching back. "Mr. Sokolov has decided to return tonight instead of tomorrow. The library must be perfect." Her tone made it clear that perfection was the minimum acceptable standard, not an aspiration. I nodded, gathering my cleaning supplies. The money was too good to complain. Triple what any other domestic position paid in the city. Money I desperately needed for my younger brother's medical bills after the accident that took our parents. The accident that still haunted his sleeping and waking hours. The library was the largest room in the East Wing. 2 stories of leather-bound volumes with a spiral staircase connecting the levels. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the manicured gardens, now silver-touched under the rising moon. I'd been in the room before, but always during daylight hours. At night, with only table lamps casting pools of golden light amid the shadows, it felt like entering the lair of some sleeping beast. I set to work dusting shelves, careful not to disturb the precise arrangement of books. Many were in languages I couldn't identify, Cyrillic letters, Asian characters, and others I had no name for. My fingers traced the spine of a particularly beautiful volume bound in deep red leather. "Curious?" The voice was deep, accented, and came from the darkest corner of the room. I nearly dropped the book, fumbling it back into place with trembling hands. Heart-hammering, I turned toward the source of the voice. He sat in a leather armchair, partially concealed in shadow. I hadn't seen him when I entered, hadn't heard him. But there was no doubt in my mind who he was. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sokolov. I didn't realize anyone was here." My voice sounded smaller than usual, the words catching in my throat. He leaned forward, the light finally reaching his face. Strong jaw darkened with stubble, eyes the color of a winter sky. Pale blue, nearly gray, and just as cold. His dark hair was cut short on the sides but longer on top, giving him a slightly untamed look despite the obvious expense of his suit. A heavy watch glinted on his wrist as he gestured to the book I'd touched. "Dostoevsky. Do you read Russian literature, miss?" He trailed off, expectant. "Rivers. Ella Rivers. And no, sir. I mean, I've read some translations in college, but not in Russian." I fought the urge to fidget under his gaze. It felt as if he could see through my skin to the nervous flutter of my pulse beneath. "College," he repeated, the word turning into something else in his accent. "Yet you clean houses." It wasn't a question, but the implication stung. "Life doesn't always go as planned, Mr. Sokolov." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, that I would speak so directly. He stood, unfolding from the chair with the fluid grace of a predator. He was taller than I'd expected, broader through the shoulders. The suit, charcoal gray and undoubtedly custom, did little to disguise the strength beneath. "No," he agreed, moving closer. "It rarely does." I took an instinctive step back, my leg bumping against the cleaning cart. A spray bottle toppled over, clattering loudly in the quiet room. He paused, a slight curve touching his lips. Not quite a smile. "Am I frightening you, Miss Rivers?" "No, sir." The lie was automatic, unconvincing even to my own ears. His almost smile deepened, You should be frightened. He reached past me, his arm brushing mine as he retrieved the fallen bottle. The brief contact sent an electric current through my skin, danger and something else I refused to name. People who aren't afraid in appropriate situations tend not to survive them. He placed the bottle on the cart, then plucked the red book from the shelf, the one I'd been touching. Prestiplania inakazania, he said, the foreign words rolling from his tongue like dark music. What does that mean? Crime and punishment. He held the book out to me. Take it. I hesitated. I couldn't. It looks valuable. Everything has a price, Miss Rivers. The question is whether you're willing to pay it. Before I could respond, the library door opened. A tall man with a face like carved stone entered, his eyes sweeping the room before landing on us. Though dressed in an expensive suit, everything about him screamed security. The watchful eyes, the way he positioned himself, the almost imperceptible bulge beneath his jacket that suggested a holster. Victor, Sokolov acknowledged without looking away from me. Sir, Kuznetsov has arrived. Something hardened in Sokolov's expression. He placed the book on a nearby table, rather than returning it to the shelf. Tell him I'll be there shortly. Victor nodded once and left, closing the door silently behind him. It seems our literary discussion must be postponed, Miss Rivers. Sokolov stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something woodsy with hints of spice. Perhaps next time I'll test your language skills. I found my voice. I only speak English, sir. His eyes traced my face as if memorizing it. Everyone can learn new things, Ella. My name in his mouth sounded different, almost intimate. It's simply a matter of proper motivation. With that, he turned and left, the door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow felt as final as a slammed door would have from anyone else. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my hands shaking as I steadied myself against the table. Something about the encounter left me feeling as though I'd narrowly avoided a trap, or perhaps had already stepped into one. The red book sat on the table where he'd left it, tempting in its forbidden beauty. I finished my cleaning quickly, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. Just as I was about to leave, my eyes fell once more on the volume. On impulse, I opened it, curious despite myself. A slip of paper fell out, covered in handwritten Cyrillic letters. I picked it up, studying the elegant script without comprehension. It looked important, possibly private. I should return it to the book, pretend I'd never seen it. Instead, I slipped it into my pocket. My apartment felt especially small and shabby after a day at the Sokolov mansion. One bedroom with barely enough space for a twin bed and dresser, a living room that doubled as my brother's bedroom, and a kitchenette with appliances older than me. But it was clean, safe, and, most importantly, ours. Ella? My brother's voice came from the fold-out couch where he slept. At 16, Jamie was all gangly limbs and 2 sharp edges, his body still recovering from the accident that had nearly taken his legs along with our parents. Hey, buddy, I said, setting down my bag. You should be asleep. Couldn't. He pushed himself up, wincing slightly. Bad pain day, then. How was work? Fine. I didn't mention meeting Sokolov. Jamie worried enough about me already. How was physical therapy? Same as always. Dr. Chen says I'm making progress. His attempt at enthusiasm fell flat. Did you eat? I had something at work. Another lie. I'd skipped lunch to finish my tasks early, and dinner wasn't provided for staff below a certain level, but the refrigerator was nearly empty, and my next paycheck wasn't for 3 days. You? Yeah. He glanced away too quickly. I sighed, heading to the kitchen. I'll make us some toast. Ella, it's fine. I'm not hungry. Well, I am. I popped bread into the toaster, the familiar routine helping to calm my nerves. The encounter with Sokolov still prickled along my skin, a feeling I couldn't quite shake. As I waited for the toast, I remembered the paper in my pocket. I pulled it out, studying the unfamiliar letters in the harsh kitchen light. What's that? Jamie asked, suddenly beside me. He moved silently now, a ghost of his formerly boisterous self. Nothing. Just something from work. I started to put it away, but he caught my wrist. Is that Russian? I blinked in surprise. How do you know that? He shrugged. We had a kid from Moscow in my class last year. His notes look like that. He took the paper, examining it. Why do you have this? It fell out of a book I was cleaning around. Not exactly a lie, but not the whole truth either. You don't happen to read Russian, do you? Jamie laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. No, but... He paused, glancing at the paper again. My friend Dmitri might be able to help. His parents are from Ukraine. I don't know, Jamie. It might be private. Yet even as I said it, curiosity gnawed at me. So? It's not like you stole state secrets or something. The toast popped up, and he grabbed a piece. I'll ask him tomorrow. I wanted to argue, but the animation in his face was too precious to extinguish. It had been months since I'd seen him excited about anything. Fine. But be discreet. He grinned, the expression transforming his thin face into a glimpse of the boy he used to be. Spy mode activated. Later, as I lay in my narrow bed, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sokolov's face, felt the phantom brush of his arm against mine. The man was dangerous. Everything about him screamed it. I should request a transfer to another part of the estate, somewhere I'd be less likely to encounter him. But the memory of his almost smile, the way he'd said my name, it stirred something I thought had died along with my old life. My dreams of finishing college and traveling the world instead of cleaning houses and counting pennies. Whatever was on that paper, whatever game Sokolov was playing, I had a sinking feeling I'd already made my first move. The next morning arrived with a pounding on our apartment door. I jerked awake, momentarily disoriented. The digital clock beside my bed read 5:47 a.m., more than an hour before my alarm. The pounding came again, more insistent. I threw on a robe over my pajamas and hurried to the door, panic rising. No one visited at this hour unless something was terribly wrong. Through the peephole, I saw Victor, Sokolov's security man, his expression as impassive as it had been in the library. My heart dropped to my stomach. Somehow they knew I had taken the paper. With trembling fingers, I unlocked the door, leaving the chain in place. Yes? Miss Rivers? His voice was surprisingly gentle for such an intimidating man. Mr. Sokolov requests your presence. Now? I'm not scheduled until 9. Now. No room for negotiation. I need to get dressed. Victor checked his watch. You have 5 minutes. A car is waiting. I closed the door, leaning against it as terror washed over me. They knew. Of course they knew. The mansion probably had cameras everywhere. I'd been stupid, impulsive, and now... Ella? Jamie stood in the living room, hair mussed from sleep, eyes wide with concern. What's going on? I forced a smile. Just work. They need me to come in early. At this hour? Rich people. I shrugged, trying for nonchalance. Go back to sleep. I left some cash on the counter for lunch. I'll text you when I know what time I'll be home. He frowned but nodded, too accustomed to our precarious circumstances to question changes in my work schedule. I dressed quickly, choosing simple black pants and a white blouse, as close to my work uniform as my personal wardrobe allowed. The paper still sat on my nightstand. I hesitated, then tucked it into my pocket again. Better to return it directly than have them find it in the apartment. Victor said nothing as I emerged, just led me to a sleek black SUV idling at the curb. The windows were tinted so dark they looked opaque. He opened the rear door for me, revealing a leather interior and, to my shock, Sokolov himself, sitting calmly as if being out before dawn was perfectly normal. Miss Rivers. He wore a different suit today, navy blue that made his eyes appear even more startlingly pale. Please, join me. It wasn't an invitation, but a command. I slid into the seat, keeping as much distance between us as the space allowed. Victor closed the door and moved to the driver's seat, the partition between front and back already raised to give us privacy. Privacy I suddenly wanted no part of. I apologize for the early hour, Sokolov said, as the car pulled away from the curb. But we have a situation that requires immediate attention. My fingers curled around the paper in my pocket. Sir, did you know? He interrupted smoothly. That your brother has missed his last 2 physical therapy appointments? The question hit me like a physical blow. What? Jamie Rivers, age 16. Suffered multiple fractures to both legs in the car accident that killed your parents 14 months ago. Sokolov recited the facts as casually as if reading a weather report. He's been seeing Dr. Chen at Metropolitan Rehabilitation Center every Tuesday and Thursday, except for the past week. Ice trickled down my spine. How do you know that? I make it a point to know everything about the people who work in my home. His gaze was steady, unreadable. Including the fact that your health insurance barely covers half of his treatments, and that you've taken out 3 personal loans in the past year to make up the difference. The car slid through early morning traffic, the city still gray in pre-dawn light. I stared out the window, mind racing. Jamie had told me he went to therapy. Had he lied? Or was Sokolov bluffing, testing me for some reason? Your silence is interesting, Sokolov remarked. Perhaps you weren't aware. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He studied me for a moment, head tilted slightly, direct. I appreciate that. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document, offering it to me. Your brother's medical records for the past month. I didn't take it. That's private information. You have no rights, he interrupted, the word twisted with amusement. Are constructs that exist only when enforced. Who will enforce your brother's privacy rights against me, Ella? The casual use of my first name again. Intimate and presumptuous. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet his gaze. Why are you doing this? Because you interest me. He placed the document on the seat between us. And because you took something that belongs to me. My heart stuttered. Here it was. The paper from Dostoevsky's novel, he continued. I'd like it back. Slowly, I withdrew it from my pocket and held it out to him, careful not to let our fingers touch. I was going to return it. It fell out when I picked up the book. And yet, you kept it overnight. He took the paper, his fingers brushing mine despite my caution. The brief contact sent an unwelcome warmth through my hand. Were you trying to translate it, perhaps? I remained silent, unwilling to implicate Jamie or his friend. Sokolov's lips curved in that same not-quite smile from the library. Let me save you the effort. It's a poem. Pushkin. I loved you once. Perhaps that love has not completely vanished. He folded the paper carefully, tucking it into his breast pocket. It continues in that vein, quite beautiful in the original Russian. Relief washed through me. Not state secrets, not criminal evidence, just poetry. You seem disappointed, he observed. No, I expected something more sinister. The amusement in his voice made me flush. Not everything in my life revolves around criminality, Miss Rivers, despite what the gossip among my staff might suggest. The car slowed, and I realized we weren't heading toward the Sokolov estate, but into the downtown business district. Where are we going? Metropolitan Rehabilitation Center. He nodded toward the medical records. Your brother needs his treatment, regardless of his apparent reluctance. I've arranged for a specialist to see him this morning. I stared at him, confusion overwhelming fear. Why would you do that? Consider it an advance on services I'll require. A chill ran through me. What services? The car stopped in front of a modern glass building. Sokolov ignored my question, nodding to Victor, who opened my door from outside. The appointment is at 7. Dr. Petrov is expecting you. I suggest you call your brother and have him meet you here. I don't understand. You will. He handed me a business card with only a phone number embossed in silver. When you've finished, call this number. My driver will collect you. Before I could protest further, I found myself standing on the sidewalk, clutching medical records I shouldn't have access to, watching the black SUV merge back into traffic. Dr. Mnan. Petrov was a stern-faced woman with steel-gray hair and hands so gentle they belied her severe appearance. She examined Jamie's legs with methodical precision, asking questions in accented English that suggested Russian was her native tongue. Jamie had been surprised by my call but agreed to meet me, his initial confusion giving way to wariness when I mentioned a specialist. Now he sat on the examination table, glancing between the doctor and me with growing unease. You've been compensating for the pain in your right leg by putting excessive pressure on the left, Dr. Petrov said, making notes on her tablet. This is causing the new pain you've been experiencing. Jamie shot me an accusing look. I'd said nothing about his missed appointments, not wanting to confront him in front of a stranger. Especially not a stranger connected to Sokolov. The hardware in the right femur is sound, but we need to adjust your physical therapy regimen. She looked up at him over rimless glasses. And you need to actually attend the sessions, young man. His cheeks flushed. The metro changed their schedule. I couldn't make it on time, so I just... Excuses help no one, least of all yourself. She turned to me. He needs aquatic therapy 3 times weekly and a new prescription for pain management. I've already arranged it. The front desk has the details. Before I could ask about cost, surely astronomical, she was gone, her white coat disappearing through the door like a retreating glacier. Jamie waited until her footsteps faded. Ella, what the hell is going on? Who is that doctor? How could we even afford? My employer arranged it. I sat beside him on the examination table, the events of the morning catching up with me. It's complicated. Your cleaning job boss paid for a specialist? Why? His eyes narrowed. Is he a creep? Is he pressuring you to... No, I interrupted, then moderated my tone. No, it's not like that. He just found out you missed some appointments and offered to help. Found out? Jamie's voice rose. How did he find out about my medical stuff? That's private. I had no good answer. The truth was too disturbing to share. That Sokolov apparently had access to information that should have been protected. That he'd been investigating us. That he seemed to expect something in return for his help. He's just being generous, I said instead, the lie sour on my tongue. And we need the help, Jamie. You know we do. His shoulders slumped. I didn't tell you about missing therapy because I know how much it costs. I thought if I skipped a few sessions we could save enough for the back rent. My heart clenched. That's not your responsibility. I'm the one who's supposed to take care of us. We're supposed to take care of each other. He slid off the table, testing his weight carefully. But I don't like this, Ella. Nobody gives something for nothing. The words echoed my own fears too closely. Let's just get the paperwork and prescriptions, okay? We can figure the rest out later. At the front desk, I braced myself for the inevitable discussion of payment, mentally calculating which credit card had any room left. Instead, the receptionist smiled brightly and handed me a folder. Everything's been taken care of, Miss Rivers. Dr. Petrov has scheduled Jamie for aquatic therapy Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 p.m. Transportation has been arranged as well. Transportation? I echoed. Yes, a car service will pick Jamie up from school and return him home after therapy. She passed me another card, similar to the one Sokolov had given me. The contact number, if you need to make any changes. Outside, Jamie examined his new prescription with bewilderment. This is the good stuff. The stuff insurance never covers. I nodded, equally confused by the whirlwind of events. Whatever Sokolov wanted in return for this generosity, it couldn't be good. Yet I couldn't deny the relief of seeing Jamie walking more easily after just one proper treatment, of having a medication that might actually control his pain. I should get to school, Jamie said, checking his phone for the time. You coming home? No, I have to go to work. I hesitated, then added, Jamie, I need you to promise me something. What? Be careful around anyone connected to Mr. Sokolov. If anyone approaches you, calls you, anything, tell me immediately. His brow furrowed. Now you're really freaking me out. I'm just being cautious. I forced a smile. It's probably nothing. Go on, you'll be late. After he left, I pulled out the silver-embossed card and dialed the number. The call connected, but no one spoke. Hello? This is Ella Rivers. The car will be there in 3 minutes, a male voice replied. Then the line went dead. True to the promise, exactly 3 minutes later, the same black SUV pulled up to the curb. This time Victor emerged and opened the rear door. Sokolov wasn't inside. Where are we going? I asked as Victor returned to the driver's seat. The residence. His eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror. Mr. Sokolov expects you to fulfill your regular duties today. The normalcy of the statement was almost disorienting after the strangeness of the morning. Of course. We drove in silence, the city awakening around us. By the time we reached the estate, the day shift had already begun their work. Mrs. Petrova met me at the staff entrance with a disapproving frown. "You're late, Ella." "Mr. Sokolov requested her presence elsewhere this morning," Victor interjected before I could respond. "She's here now at his instruction." Mrs. Petrova's expression remained stern, but she nodded stiffly. "Very well. East Wing today. The master suite requires attention." My stomach tightened. In 4 weeks, I'd never been assigned to clean Sokolov's personal quarters. "Yes, ma'am." The master suite occupied the entire northeastern corner of the mansion's second floor. I'd passed the heavy double doors before, but never entered. Now, keying in the staff code Mrs. Petrova had given me, I felt like I was crossing a threshold in more ways than one. The outer room was a sitting area larger than my entire apartment, furnished with sleek, modern pieces that contrasted with the mansion's more traditional decor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the estate's grounds, the city skyline visible in the distance. I moved through the space cautiously, noting the lack of personal items. No photographs, no mementos. Nothing to suggest the man who lived here had a past or connections beyond these walls. The only hint of personality was a chess set on a side table, an unfinished game in progress. I resisted the urge to examine it more closely. The bedroom beyond was dominated by an enormous bed with charcoal gray linens. Unlike the sitting area, this room had been lived in. The bed was unmade. A book lay open on the nightstand, a glass with a finger of amber liquid beside it. The connected bathroom was similarly used, with damp towels and the lingering steam of a recent shower. I set to work, grateful for the familiar routine of cleaning. Whatever game Sokolov was playing, whatever he wanted from me, I could postpone facing it while I changed sheets and scrubbed tiles. In the bathroom, I found a small leather-bound notebook beside the sink. It lay open, displaying more of that elegant Cyrillic handwriting I'd seen on the poem. Resisting the urge to touch it, I cleaned around it carefully. "Curious again, Miss Rivers?" I startled violently, nearly knocking over a bottle of cologne. Sokolov stood in the doorway, jacket removed, and shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal muscled forearms. He must move like a ghost to have approached without my hearing. "I was just cleaning around your things, sir." And admirably resisting the temptation to snoop, he stepped into the bathroom, the already limited space shrinking with his presence. A marked improvement from yesterday. Heat rose in my cheeks. About the paper, I really was going to return it. After having it translated, it wasn't a question. I remained silent, unwilling to lie but equally unwilling to confess. How was Dr. Petrov? I trust she was thorough. The abrupt change of subject threw me. She was... Yes. Thank you for arranging that. And your brother? Will he be more diligent about his appointments now? I think so. I shifted uncomfortably, too aware of his proximity in the enclosed space. Mr. Sokolov, I appreciate your help, but I don't understand why you're doing this. He leaned against the doorframe, studying me with those winter-pale eyes. Perhaps I simply dislike waste. Waste? A bright young woman with college education reduced to scrubbing toilets. A teenager missing medical care he needs. He shrugged. Potential squandered due to circumstance seems wasteful to me. So this is... charity? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. That almost smile appeared again. I'm not known for my charitable nature, Ella. The familiar use of my name still sent a strange thrill through me, despite everything. Then what is it? An investment. He pushed away from the doorframe, stepping closer. I help your brother receive the care he needs. In exchange, you help me with a small matter. My throat went dry. What kind of matter? One that requires discretion and a certain innocence that my usual associates lack. He reached past me for the notebook, his arm brushing against mine again. Nothing illegal. Nothing that will harm anyone. The promise should have been reassuring. It wasn't. What exactly do you want me to do? I managed to ask. His eyes traveled over my face, lingering on my lips before returning to meet my gaze. Read something in Russian. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. Read in Russian? Yes. He stepped back, giving me space to breathe again. A simple task. Wouldn't you agree? But I don't speak Russian, which is precisely why I need you. He closed the notebook and slipped it into his pocket. Follow me. Still confused, I followed him into the bedroom, where he gestured for me to sit in an armchair by the window. I perched on the edge, hands clasped in my lap, while he retrieved a laptop from a desk across the room. You see, Ella, he began, opening the computer. In my line of work, trust is a rare commodity. Rarer still is the ability to verify that trust hasn't been misplaced. Your line of work, I repeated carefully, which is... That almost smile again. Let's call it import-export. International trade. Nothing that would interest you. Everything about his tone suggested otherwise. The point is, he continued, I have associates who claim to be delivering certain messages on my behalf. Messages written in Russian, to recipients who speak Russian. I need to confirm the messages being delivered are, in fact, the ones I've approved. Couldn't you just ask someone who speaks Russian to check? Anyone who speaks Russian in my organization would have potentially conflicting loyalties. He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a document filled with Cyrillic text. You, however, have no such entanglements, no understanding of what you'd be reading, no ability to alter the content based on personal agendas. It made a twisted kind of sense, in a paranoid, criminal mastermind sort of way. So you want me to, what, read this out loud? Precisely. He pulled a small digital recorder from a drawer. I'll record you reading it. My associate will play the recording to the intended recipient, proving the message came from me, without any unauthorized modifications. Why would they believe it's from you if it's my voice? Because you'll be introduced as my... He paused, considering. Personal assistant. A role I'm prepared to make official, with compensation significantly better than your current position. My head spun. You want to promote me from maid to personal assistant just to read something in a language I don't understand? The reading is merely the first task. I have many matters that require a trustworthy assistant. His eyes held mine. Someone intelligent enough to follow instructions precisely, discreet enough to maintain confidentiality, and, forgive my bluntness, someone whose well-being provides additional insurance against betrayal. The implied threat toward Jamie didn't need to be stated explicitly. My brother's new medical care, the transportation, all of it could disappear as quickly as it had been provided. This doesn't sound legal, I said quietly. I assure you, reading a document aloud breaks no laws. He set the recorder on the table between us. The rest of your duties would be entirely legitimate. Managing my calendar, arranging travel, coordinating with household staff, and if I refuse? His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Then you return to your regular duties, and your brother returns to his regular care schedule. No harm done. Except Jamie's regular care schedule hadn't been working. Dr. Petrov had made that clear. Without the new treatment plan, his recovery would stall, possibly reverse, and our financial situation would remain just as precarious. What would this pay? The question felt surreal even as I asked it. Triple your current salary, health insurance that would actually cover your brother's needs, a car at your disposal. He leaned back, watching my reaction. And an apartment in the East Wing staff quarters, should you wish to live on the estate. Your brother would be welcome as well. It was too much, too generous, which only made me more suspicious. And all I have to do is read some Russian documents occasionally to start. His gaze was steady. I won't pretend the role won't become more complex over time. But I'm not asking you to do anything illegal or immoral, Ella. Just to be loyal and discreet. A voice in my head screamed that this was dangerous, that I should refuse and walk away. But another, more insistent voice reminded me of Jamie's medical bills, of our precarious housing situation, of the exhaustion of living always on the edge of disaster. I'd need time to think about it, of course. He nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less. In the meantime, would you be willing to complete this first reading? Consider it a trial run. I looked at the screen, the unfamiliar letters swimming before my eyes. One reading. What harm could it do? All right. He pressed a button on the recorder, the small red light indicating it was active. Whenever you're ready. I leaned forward, squinting at the text. I don't know how to pronounce any of this. Just sound it out as best you can. The recipient will understand the meaning, even with imperfect pronunciation. Taking a deep breath, I began to stumble through the text, mangling the unfamiliar sounds and pausing frequently. Sokolov occasionally corrected my pronunciation of a particular word, his voice patient. The document was several paragraphs long, taking nearly 10 minutes to read with all my hesitations. When I finally finished, Sokolov stopped the recorder and replayed the beginning. My voice sounded strange, the foreign words awkward on my tongue. "Perfect," he said, stopping the playback. "Exactly what I needed. What did I just read? A business proposal. Quite boring, actually." He closed the laptop. "Thank you, Ella. You've been very helpful." The dismissal was clear. I stood, my duties as a maid apparently resumed for the moment. "Should I finish cleaning the suite? That won't be necessary. I'd like you to take the rest of the day to consider my offer." He rose as well, towering over me. "A car will take you home. Be prepared to give me your answer tomorrow morning." "And if my answer is no, then nothing changes." His eyes belied the casualness of his tone. "But I think you're intelligent enough to recognize an opportunity when it presents itself." As if on cue, there was a knock at the outer door. Sokolov called out something in Russian, and Victor appeared in the bedroom doorway. "Sir, Kuznetsov is calling again." Sokolov's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tell him I'll call back in 10 minutes. He turned to me. "Victor will escort you out. Consider my offer carefully, Ella. It won't be repeated." I followed Victor through the mansion and out to the now familiar SUV. As we drove away from the estate, my thoughts churned. Everything about the situation felt wrong, dangerous. Sokolov was clearly involved in something illegal. No legitimate businessman needed such elaborate verification systems, or maintained the kind of security I'd witnessed. Yet the offer was too good to refuse, especially with Jamie's health at stake, and I had to admit, some small part of me was intrigued by Sokolov himself, by the glimpses of unexpected intelligence, and even kindness beneath the dangerous exterior. "He's not what you think," Victor said suddenly, breaking the silence. I started, surprised by the unsolicited comment from the usually taciturn man. "What do you mean?" His eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Sokolov, he's not like the others in his position." "What position is that exactly?" Victor's lips curved in a slight smile. "You're smart enough to guess." I looked out the window at the passing city. "Something illegal. Something necessary." He turned onto my street with practiced ease, though I'd never given him my address. Another reminder of how much Sokolov already knew about me. In this part of the world, with these people, someone must maintain order. Better him than others who would take his place. The car stopped in front of my building. Victor turned to face me, his expression serious. "I've worked for Mr. Sokolov for 12 years. He is a hard man, yes, sometimes ruthless, but never cruel without reason." His gaze was intense. "If he's offering you this position, he sees something in you worth investing in. That's rare." "Thanks for the character reference," I said, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. "But I'm pretty sure he just wants someone he can manipulate and control." Victor shrugged. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he's lonely." The statement was so unexpected it left me momentarily speechless. Before I could respond, Victor had exited the car and opened my door. "Think about it, Miss Rivers. We'll see you tomorrow." Jamie was still at school when I arrived home, giving me time to process the morning's events alone. I paced our small apartment, weighing options that all seemed impossible. Refuse Sokolov's offer, keep my regular job, and watch Jamie struggle with inadequate care. Accept the offer, improving our situation dramatically, while tying myself to a man who was almost certainly a criminal. Or option 3, run. Take Jamie and leave the city, start over somewhere Sokolov couldn't find us. But with what money? And how far would we get before his resources tracked us down? By the time Jamie returned from school, I'd made my decision, the only one that felt possible. "How was the new doctor?" he asked, dropping his backpack by the door. "Good. The new treatment plan should help a lot." I forced a smile. "And guess what? I got promoted." Jamie's eyebrows shot up. "From maid to what?" "Personal assistant to Mr. Sokolov." "The cleaning service guy?" "He owns the house, Jamie. It's his estate." I busied myself making tea, avoiding his gaze. It's a big opportunity. Better pay, better hours, health insurance that will actually cover your treatments. Jamie was quiet for a moment, watching me. This is because of me, isn't it? Because I messed up and skipped therapy. No. I turned to face him. This is because I'm qualified for more than cleaning, and Mr. Sokolov recognized that. Bullshit. Jamie rarely cursed. This morning some fancy doctor appears out of nowhere, and suddenly you're the personal assistant to some rich guy none of us have ever met. Something's not right, Ella. It's just a job, Jamie. Then why won't you look me in the eye when you say that? I sighed, abandoning the pretense. Okay, yes, it's complicated. Mr. Sokolov is not your average employer, but he's offering us a chance at stability, at getting you the care you need without bankrupting us. What does he want in return? Jamie's voice was quiet. Just my loyalty and discretion. Normal assistant stuff. You're a terrible liar. I sat down at our tiny kitchen table, gesturing for him to join me. Look, I don't know exactly what I'm getting into, but I know our situation, and I know this could change everything for us. Jamie sat across from me, his young face too serious, too worn for his age. I don't want you doing something dangerous because of me. It's not dangerous, it's just unconventional. He's a criminal, isn't he? When I didn't answer, Jamie shook his head. Great. My sister's going to work for the mob. It's not like that, I insisted, though I had no evidence to support my claim. And anyway, it's just a job. I'm not joining his organization or whatever. I'm just going to manage his calendar and read some documents. Read documents? In what language? I hesitated. Russian. Jamie stared at me. You don't speak Russian. That's kind of the point. I rubbed my temples, a headache forming. It's complicated, Jamie, but I've thought it through, and this is the right decision for us right now. What if I say no? What if I refuse to accept his help? Then I'd respect that, I said, though the thought sent panic through me. But I'm asking you to trust me on this. I won't let anything bad happen to either of us. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I don't like it, but I trust you. I reached across the table to squeeze his hand, hoping his trust wasn't misplaced. The next morning, Victor arrived precisely at 8 a.m. This time, the SUV contained not Sokolov, but a slim woman with a tablet. Miss Rivers, she greeted me with a clipped British accent. I'm Natalia, Mr. Sokolov's chief of staff. I understand you'll be joining our team, so he'd assumed my answer would be yes. Irritation flared, but I suppressed it. That's right. Excellent. We have several matters to attend to before you begin your official duties. She consulted her tablet. First, a suitable wardrobe, then apartment viewings, unless you'd prefer to live off-site. The whirlwind began. By noon, I'd been measured for custom suits and dresses at a boutique that didn't display price tags, toured 3 potential apartments in upscale buildings near the Sokolov estate, and signed more paperwork than I'd seen in my life. Natalia handled everything with brisk efficiency, barely consulting me except where my signature was required. Mr. Sokolov prefers his personal staff to maintain certain appearances, she explained as we exited the 3rd apartment building. The clothing allowance is quite generous, as you've seen. You'll be expected to dress appropriately for all occasions. When do I actually start working? I asked, struggling to keep up with her rapid pace. Tomorrow. Mr. Sokolov has a full schedule, and you'll need to familiarize yourself with his routines. She checked her watch. Now, we have an appointment at Gerard's for appropriate accessories. Gerard's? The jewelry store? Mr. Sokolov expects his staff to project a certain image. You'll need suitable pieces for various events. She eyed my simple silver studs with barely concealed disdain. Your current jewelry is inadequate. By the time Victor drove me home that evening, my head was spinning with information, instructions, and the sheer excess of everything I'd experienced. Natalia had efficiently transformed me from maid to executive assistant in the space of hours, at least on paper. Whether I could actually perform the role remained to be seen. Jamie was waiting anxiously, pacing our small living room. He froze when I entered, eyes widening at the garment bags and boxes Victor carried in behind me. What is all this? Apparently, I need a new wardrobe. I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. And we're moving. Moving where? We have options. I closed my eyes briefly. 3 different apartments, all ridiculously nice, or we could live at the estate, in the staff quarters. Jamie sat beside me, concern etched on his face. This is happening really fast, Ella. I know. I opened my eyes, forcing a smile. But it's good, right? Better apartment, better care for you. I start tomorrow. Doing what, exactly? I hesitated. Managing his schedule, coordinating meetings, handling correspondence, and reading things in Russian? Maybe sometimes. I straightened, trying to project confidence. Look, I know it's strange and sudden, but this could be really good for us, Jamie. A fresh start. He didn't look convinced, but nodded anyway. If you say so. As Victor left with a promise to collect me at 7 a.m. the next morning, I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Or possibly the best decision I'd ever made. Either way, there was no turning back now. The next morning, I awoke before my alarm, anxiety and anticipation mingling in my stomach. I selected one of the new outfits Natalia had approved, a charcoal pencil skirt and ivory blouse that probably cost more than a month's rent at our apartment. The fabric felt luxurious against my skin, the tailoring perfect despite the rushed alterations. Victor arrived precisely on time, his expression as impassive as ever. Mr. Sokolov is expecting you for breakfast, he informed me as we drove toward the estate. He'll brief you on today's schedule. Breakfast. With Sokolov. My nerves intensified. The mansion looked different in the clear morning light, less intimidating but more imposing in its grandeur. Instead of the staff entrance I'd always used, Victor led me through the main doors into a soaring foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier. A far cry from the service corridors I'd navigated as a maid. Sokolov waited in a sun-filled breakfast room overlooking the gardens. He stood as I entered, his eyes traveling over my new attire with obvious approval. Ella, you look appropriate. From anyone else, it might have been an insult. From him, it seemed high praise. Thank you, sir. I remained standing, uncertain of protocol in my new role. Please sit. He gestured to the place setting across from his. And in private, Mikhail is acceptable. Mikhail. It felt strangely intimate to use his first name. Yes, sir. Mikhail. I sat, smoothing my skirt nervously. A server appeared silently, pouring coffee and placing a selection of pastries between us. Sokolov. Mikhail. Waited until we were alone before speaking again. I assume Natalia explained the basics of your position yesterday? Some of it, I admitted, though it was a rather overwhelming day. His lips quirked in that almost smile. She can be efficient. To clarify, you'll manage my personal calendar, handle correspondence that doesn't require my direct attention, and accompany me to certain meetings and events. And read documents in Russian, I added, when necessary. He sipped his coffee. You'll also serve as a buffer between me and those seeking access. Many people want things from me, Ella. Part of your job is to ensure only the important ones reach me. How do I determine what's important? You'll learn. He selected a pastry, breaking it open with long fingers. Your first priority today is familiarizing yourself with my schedule and current projects. Natalia has prepared files for you. We spent the next hour reviewing his calendar, a complex web of meetings, calls, and travel that spanned multiple time zones. Most entries were cryptically labeled, and Mikhail offered little elaboration beyond whether my presence would be required. You'll need a proper security clearance, he remarked, checking his watch. Victor will handle that this afternoon. For now, we have a meeting at 10. We? I asked, surprised. A potential business partner, Russian, but he speaks English. You'll take notes. The day accelerated from there. The meeting took place in Mikhail's private study, a wood-paneled room lined with books and dominated by a massive desk. The visitor, a barrel-chested man named Petrov, spoke rapid-fire English with a thick accent, discussing shipping routes and cargo manifests, with thinly veiled euphemisms that made the illegal nature of the business obvious. I kept my expression neutral, taking careful notes while avoiding eye contact with Petrov, who who occasionally glanced at me with undisguised curiosity. Mikhail remained composed throughout, his responses measured and often ambiguous. Only once did his tone harden, when Petrov mentioned someone called Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov is no longer a concern, Mikhail said, his voice suddenly cold. The matter is resolved. Petrov's eyebrows rose, but he wisely changed the subject. After the meeting, Mikhail reviewed my notes with approval. You have an eye for detail. Good. That man, I ventured. Petrov. He wasn't really discussing textile imports, was he? Mikhail studied me for a moment. It's better for everyone if the paperwork says textiles. So I'm documenting illegal activities now? You're documenting a business meeting. His expression remained calm. The legal interpretations are complex and often subject to jurisdictional disputes. A diplomatic way of saying yes, it was illegal, but he wasn't concerned about it. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his face hardening. Kuznetsov again, persistent. He turned to me. I need you to deliver a message, in Russian. My stomach tightened. Like before? Similar, but in person this time. He moved to his desk, withdrawing a folder. Kuznetsov will be at the Vanguard Club tonight. You'll join me. A club? I don't think... It's not a request, Ella. His tone brooked no argument. Victor will take you home to change. Wear the black dress Natalia selected yesterday. Be ready at 8. The black dress was unlike anything I'd ever owned. Sleek, elegant, with a neckline that hinted at rather than displayed, and a slit that showed just enough leg to be noticed without being obvious. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman reflected back looked sophisticated, confident, nothing like the exhausted maid who had cleaned toilets a week ago. Jamie whistled when I emerged from my bedroom. Wow, you look different. Good different or bad different? I asked, smoothing the unfamiliar fabric. Just not like my sister. His expression was troubled, more like one of them. The comment stung more than it should have. It's just clothes, Jamie. Is it? He gestured to the apartment, now littered with boxes and bags from designer stores, because it seems like a lot more than that. Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a text. Victor was waiting outside. We'll talk tomorrow, I promised, grabbing the small clutch purse that matched the dress. Don't wait up. The Vanguard Club occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown tower. The elevator required a key card, which Victor supplied, and opened directly into a dimly lit reception area, where a stone-faced security guard checked an iPad before nodding us through. Inside, the club was nothing like I'd imagined. No pulsing music or crowded dance floor. Instead, small groups of well-dressed people conversed in hushed tones at scattered seating areas. A bar staffed by black-suited bartenders occupied one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic city views along another. Mikhail waited at a corner table, wearing an impeccably tailored black suit that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His eyes tracked our approach, lingering on me with an intensity that sent heat up my neck. Ella. He stood as we reached the table, his gaze still appraising. The dress suits you. Thank you. I took the seat he indicated, acutely aware of the stares from neighboring tables. Is this where I deliver the message? Shortly. Kuznetsov likes to make people wait. He signaled a waiter, who appeared instantly. Vodka. The beluga. The waiter turned to me expectantly. The same, I said, not wanting to appear out of place. As the waiter left, Mikhail leaned closer. Kuznetsov is a necessary business associate, but not a friend. He'll attempt to unsettle you. Ignore it. What exactly am I reading to him? A reminder of our agreement and a warning. His eyes hardened. He's been making overtures to rivals, testing boundaries. And my reading this in Russian accomplishes what? It proves the message comes directly from me, unfiltered. And it establishes that I trust you enough to speak for me. His gaze was penetrating. Trust is currency in my world, Ella. I'm showing him you have mine. The implication sent a chill through me. I was being used as a symbol, a demonstration of Mikhail's confidence, and his ownership. Our drinks arrived, crystalline glasses filled with clear liquid. Mikhail raised his slightly in a silent toast before taking a sip. I followed suit, the vodka burning a clean path down my throat. He's here. Mikhail murmured, his eyes focused over my shoulder. I turned slightly to see a man entering from the elevator, flanked by 2 obvious security personnel. He was older than I'd expected, in his 60s perhaps, with silver hair and a face marked by years of hard living. Unlike the other patrons, he wore no tie with his dark suit. The top buttons of his shirt opened to reveal a gold Orthodox cross. The room's energy shifted subtly as he moved through the space, people adjusting their positions to track his movement while pretending not to notice him. Power, I realized, recognizing the same invisible aura that surrounded Mikhail. Kuznetsov approached our table without hurry. His eyes shrewd and calculating. He spoke in Russian, the words flowing too rapidly for me to catch even a syllable. Mikhail responded in the same language, his tone casual but his posture tense. Then he switched to English. My associate has a message for you. Kuznetsov's gaze shifted to me, assessing in a way that made my skin crawl. He replied in heavily accented English. This is your new messenger? Very pretty. Upgrade from the last one. Mikhail's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He withdrew a folded paper from his jacket and handed it to me. Read this. Clearly. The paper contained several paragraphs of Cyrillic text. I took a steadying breath and began to read, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds just as I had before. As I read, Kuznetsov's expression changed from amusement to something darker, his eyes narrowing. When I finished, Mikhail took the paper back, his fingers brushing mine in what seemed like a gesture of reassurance. Kuznetsov was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting between us. Finally, he spoke in English. Bold move, using outsider. American girl with no Russian, clever. I thought you'd appreciate the precaution, Mikhail replied smoothly. Precaution, yes. Kuznetsov's smile didn't reach his eyes. Message received. We talk details tomorrow. With that, he nodded curtly and left, his security detail falling in behind him. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. What did I just read to him? Mikhail pocketed the paper. Terms for our continued cooperation. And consequences if those terms are breached. Threats? Clarifications. He finished his vodka. You did well. The praise shouldn't have pleased me, but it did. Is that it? Can we leave now? Not yet. His hand covered mine on the table, warm and unexpectedly gentle. It would look strange to depart immediately after such an exchange. We'll have another drink. His touch lingered longer than necessary, sending a current of awareness through me that had nothing to do with fear. I withdrew my hand, disturbed by my reaction. Is this part of my job description too? Pretending to be more than your assistant? Something flickered in his eyes. What makes you think it's pretending? His question hung in the air between us, charged with implications I wasn't ready to face. Before I could respond, a server appeared with fresh drinks, giving me a moment to compose myself. I work for you, I said finally, keeping my voice low. That's the arrangement. Mikhail's expression remained unreadable, but something in his eyes softened. Yes. That's the arrangement. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions to people whose names I immediately forgot. Business associates, politicians, other figures in Mikhail's orbit who regarded me with varying degrees of curiosity and assessment. I maintained the professional demeanor I'd observed in Natalia, speaking only when addressed directly, always deferring to Mikhail. It was nearly midnight when we finally left, the city gleaming below us as Victor drove toward my apartment. Mikhail sat beside me in the back seat, his presence filling the space in a way that made the luxury SUV feel suddenly confining. You have questions, he observed, breaking the silence. I hesitated, unsure how far I could push. What happened to your last assistant? His eyebrow quirked slightly, suggesting surprise at my choice of question. He retired. To Monaco. Quite comfortably. And the one before that? There was no one before that. He turned to look out the window. Victor handled most duties until the operation expanded. So why me? The question had been burning inside me since that first meeting in the library. Why choose someone with no experience, no connections to your world? Perhaps that was exactly what I needed. His gaze returned to me, intense even in the dim light. Someone untainted by the cynicism and calculation that surrounds me. Someone who still believes in concepts like right and wrong, good and evil. You make it sound like I'm naive. Not naive, uncorrupted. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. Do you know how rare that is in my world, Ella? The touch sent a shiver through me that I couldn't entirely blame on fear. I pulled away slightly, confused by my own reaction. And what happens when I become corrupted? When I stop seeing clear lines between right and wrong, his lips curved in that familiar almost smile, then perhaps I'll need to find another innocent. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they stirred something possessive and defiant. I'm not as innocent as you think. No? Real amusement touched his eyes now. Prove it. The challenge hung between us as the car stopped outside my building. Victor remained in the driver's seat, making no move to open my door as he usually did. Tomorrow, Mikhail said, his voice low. We leave for New York. 3 days. Pack accordingly. New York? I blinked in surprise. What about Jamie? Your brother will be well cared for. I've arranged for him to stay at the estate if he wishes, or he may remain here with a security detail. You've thought of everything, I murmured, not entirely pleased by his presumption. It's my job to think of everything. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. Just as it's yours to anticipate my needs. The words sent a flush of heat through me that had nothing to do with anger. I fumbled for the door handle, suddenly desperate for air. Good night, Mr. Sokolov. His soft laugh followed me as I hurried toward my building. Sleep well, Ella. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of private jets, luxury hotels, and meetings in places I'd only seen in movies. New York, London, Dubai, Tokyo. Each destination more extravagant than the last. Each business associate more intimidating. I delivered messages in Russian, took notes in meetings where the real meaning lurked beneath euphemisms and coded language, and gradually began to understand the scope of Mikhail's empire. Import, export, was only the legitimate facade. Behind it lay a complex network of businesses, some legal, many operating in gray areas, and some, though Mikhail never explicitly confirmed this, clearly criminal. Yet he maintained a strict code that surprised me. No drugs, no human trafficking, no harming innocents. There's enough money to be made without descending to that level of depravity, he told me once, when I dared to question a particular arrangement that seemed questionable. I have standards, Ella, lines I won't cross. Jamie adapted to our new circumstances with the resilience of youth. He chose to remain in our apartment rather than move to the estate, but accepted the security detail. Victor's guys, as he called them, with minimal complaint once he realized they would stay discreetly in the background. His health improved dramatically under Dr. Petrov's care, his spirit brightening as pain became manageable for the first time since the accident. And somewhere along the way, the fear I'd felt toward Mikhail transformed into something far more dangerous. I noticed it first in Tokyo, when he placed his hand at the small of my back to guide me through a crowded reception. The touch was proprietary but gentle, and instead of discomfort, I felt a surge of warmth. Later that night, as we reviewed meeting notes in his hotel suite, I found myself watching his hands, imagining them on my skin. In London, a rival businessman mistook me for Mikhail's lover, making an insinuating comment in English he assumed I wouldn't understand. Before I could react, Mikhail had the man pinned against a wall, speaking rapid Russian in a tone that required no translation. When he returned to my side, his eyes still cold with anger, I felt not fear but a disturbing thrill. And in Moscow, where we traveled for what Mikhail called a necessary demonstration of loyalty, he took me to his childhood home, a small apartment in a crumbling building far from the glamorous city center. There, surrounded by faded photos and worn furniture preserved like a museum to a life long abandoned, he told me about his mother who had died too young, his father who had disappeared one night and never returned, and the hunger that had driven him to the streets where he'd found both salvation and damnation. You think I'm a monster, he said, his voice unusually raw. Perhaps I am, but I became what I needed to be to survive. I reached for him then, my fingers threading through his, a connection that went beyond employer and employee. I don't think you're a monster. His eyes, usually so controlled, revealed a vulnerability I'd never seen before. Then you're more dangerous than I thought. We stood there, connected by our clasped hands, teetering on the edge of something neither of us had acknowledged. Then his phone rang. Always the phone. Always some crisis requiring immediate attention. And the moment shattered. Yet something had changed between us. An unspoken shift in our carefully maintained boundaries. I told myself it was Stockholm Syndrome, a textbook response to my situation. But in quiet moments of honesty, I knew it was more than that. I was falling for the man who had essentially bought my loyalty, who had entangled me in a web of obligations and secrets from which I could never fully escape. The realization should have horrified me. Instead, it felt like finally acknowledging a truth I'd been denying for weeks. You haven't asked me what was in the message you read to Kuznetsov, Mikhail said one evening as we sat in his study, reviewing documents for an upcoming meeting. 3 months had passed since that night at the Vanguard Club, and my Russian had improved enough that I could recognize some basic words, though still not enough to understand complex communications. I looked up from my tablet, surprised by the sudden reference to an event we hadn't discussed since it happened. Would you have told me if I'd asked? Perhaps. He set aside the contract he'd been reviewing. Kuznetsov was testing boundaries, approaching a rival organization about a potential alliance against me. The message you delivered was an ultimatum. Return to our agreed arrangement or face elimination. The casual way he mentioned elimination sent a chill through me, a stark reminder of the world I now inhabited. Did he comply? I asked, although the fact that Kuznetsov still regularly appeared in Mikhail's calendar suggested the answer. He did. Mikhail's expression darkened slightly, though not without attempting one last play for leverage. What kind of leverage? His eyes met mine, intense and suddenly dangerous. He had you investigated. Your background, your brother, your parents' accident. He thought to use you against me. My pulse quickened. Use me how? By taking you. The words were spoken softly, but with an undercurrent of fury that made them more frightening than if he'd shouted. He assumed you were important to me personally, not just professionally. A vulnerability he could exploit. Am I? The question escaped before I could consider its wisdom. A vulnerability? Mikhail was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood, moving toward the window that overlooked the garden now draped in early evening shadows. Yes, he said finally. You are. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. I rose from my chair, drawn toward him by something stronger than caution. What happened to Kuznetsov? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. He's no longer a concern. Mikhail turned to face me, his eyes darker than usual. No one will threaten what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have offended me. Instead, it sent a rush of heat through my body. I took another step closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. Is that what I am? Yours? His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing gently across my cheekbone. What do you think, Ella? I hesitated, then abandoned caution. I think I stopped being just your employee a long time ago. Something flickered in his eyes, relief, desire, triumph. I couldn't tell which. And when did you realize this? Probably in Moscow, I admitted. When you showed me where you grew up, when I saw the man behind the power. His smile was different this time, real, reaching his eyes. For me, it was the library. The first time we met, you were afraid, but you didn't cower. I was terrified, I corrected, leaning slightly into his touch. You were the most dangerous man I'd ever seen. And now? His voice had dropped lower, his accent more pronounced. Now you're still dangerous. I reached up, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. But not to me. His other arm circled my waist, drawing me against him. Don't be so certain of that. Then his mouth was on mine, the kiss beginning gently before deepening into something hungry and demanding. I responded with equal fervor, months of denied attraction finally finding release. When we eventually broke apart, both breathing heavily, his eyes had darkened to storm clouds. This changes everything, you understand? There's no going back. I nodded, fully aware of the implications of crossing this line. I know. Your brother, is almost 18, nearly recovered, and has been telling me for weeks that there's something between us, I interrupted with a small smile. He's more perceptive than I gave him credit for. Mikhail laughed, the sound rich and surprisingly youthful. Smart boy. Then he sobered. My life is complicated, Ella. Dangerous. There will always be threats, enemies, complications. I know that too. I held his gaze steadily. I've seen enough of your world to understand what I'm choosing, and yet you're choosing it anyway. Wonder colored his voice, as if he couldn't quite believe it. I'm choosing you, I corrected. Despite everything else, he kissed me again, more gently this time. 5 million, he murmured against my lips. I pulled back slightly, confused. What? The wager and the message you read to Kuznetsov. Amusement glinted in his eyes. I bet him 5 million you would still be by my side in 3 months, despite knowing what I am. You used me as a bet? I should have been angry. But somehow it seemed fitting, the beginning of our strange relationship bookending its transformation. I never bet unless I'm certain of winning. His arms tightened around me, and I always protect what's mine. As his lips found mine again, I surrendered to the truth I'd been fighting for months. In this dangerous game we'd been playing, we had both lost and won in ways neither of us could have predicted.